we did the work.
Right.
So stuff like that you don't think about.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm saying. That's
imagine
good.
you hedge out and you do you got 20 grand out there, 30 grand out there in work that was already started, and you getting paid based on work completed. And then they come out doing an inspection and they don't pay you. Then what?
Yeah.
If you ain't got the liquid to keep floating your project, it stops.
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So these are all the things because, the carrying cost of something like this, the mortgage, the utilities, once you can get them on, it ain't cheap. So every week delay can cost you $1,500 a week, $2,000 a week.
For the holding cost?
For the delay, because of the holding cost.
Okay.
So it's, you really as a owner, an operator, have to start looking at things from a different perspective, from an enterprise perspective versus owning an asset perspective. Right. Because just like any other enterprise, you look at a P&L regularly, right? Profit and loss statement. You would look at, all of those nuances that can impact cash flow, right? And I'm talking cash reserves initially when I say cash flow, not the actual cash flow that comes out of the process. And looking at ways to trim the fat, cut expenses, looking at, and this is one thing that's so important. This is why it's a poor idea. So most of the time when we buy buildings like this, it's because somebody tried to self-manage. And you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Even if you're out there and you got single family or duplexes or whatever, you shouldn't self-manage, because what happens is we're human beings. And at some point you're gonna get roped into that conversation and have empathy for situations, not that you shouldn't,
right,
but there's still a line and a healthy balance between having empathy and being taken advantage of, and then hence losing money on your deal.
For sure.
So it's important to have that liaison in between you that can give you and present you data and situations objectively. And that way, as an enterprise, right, then you can effectively make those decisions that have the greatest return for everybody.
Right.
And sometimes the greatest return for the tenant is to get out of a situation they can't pay for.
Yeah.
You know what? So I'm gonna get you out of here because you can't afford it anyway.
Right.
So why should you even struggle having to figure out how to pay me every month?
Right.
You're getting into it, you and your spouse arguing, kids upset, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you got the uncertainty of when you're gonna get evicted.
Wow.
So how about you leave my place, I'll take it back, take care of it. You go find somewhere that you can afford.
That's the reality of stuff that happens.
I mean, it is though, right?
Yeah.
But when you know about, the mom was dealing with cancer, and then the dad, car broke down, so he lost his job. When you get roped into that, then it obscures some of the other reality and truths to what's going on.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just so important. These are the kind of conversations I have with myself every day.
That's
I get
good.
to talk to you about it today, which is cool.
Okay. And I'm soaking it in.
All right.
Now, what would you say? What would you project? Right, and I know a lot of things could come up, stuff that you probably didn't see, of course, that you didn't know. But what would you project for a building this? How long would it take?
Yeah, let's go over here for a second. So when you talk about figuring out the cost of a renovation, how long it'll take, first of all, a big mistake everybody make is that they don't walk every unit. They figure, I seen what a one bed look like, I seen what a two bed look like. It's gonna be the same footprint.
Yeah.
Right. The issue that you have with that though is, so what about this one?
Right.
They got a big hole in the floor. This is gonna be our worst unit.
Yeah.
So when we look at every single unit, then we can come up with, okay, 70% of the units are like what we looked at over there, for instance, right?
Okay.
And then 30% are gonna be like these. But this 30%, the amount of work for this 30% is equivalent to more than the work for the 70%.
Right. Yeah.
Then it's just about having a conversation with your GC. Yeah. We got a rule of thumb that normally it's about $1,000 per day.
Okay.
So if you got $200,000 worth of work to do, you got about 200 days of work.
Yeah.
Now, because you're at an apartment building, it's economy of scale, you should be able to compress some of that time.
For sure.
Because it's rinse and repeat in the same location.
Okay.
Because the other piece is we take for granted that contractors only working on your stuff. I wish that was the case.
Right.
Now, in this particular case, he is working on my stuff, but he's working on multiple projects for me. Right. Yeah. And so we strategically had to outline based on where that project was starting at and the scope of work over there, how that would impact this and how we could cross-pollinate, et cetera. But yeah, we came up with between 4 to 5 months for this one.
Okay. Now, do you normally, so before you choose to purchase, do you think it's always good to maybe have the GC walk it with you as well?
1,000%. So this is our process. When at all possible, this is the way I like to always do it. I'll have the GC go out first.
Before you?
Because I don't never see them. I buy a lot of these, I don't never see them.
Okay.
I'm in Orlando,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So don't try this at home. You know what I'm saying? So I get it under contract without ever seeing it, just based off of analyzing it remotely. Then I have my GC go out, because that don't cost me nothing. Mm-hmm. Some GCs can't charge, but you got a working relationship with folks. Have them go out and look at it and make sure that their cost structure and my cost structure for the rehab align. Mm-hmm. Then I'll pay a private inspector to go out and inspect it. Because if I sent, so like for instance, I didn't have that latitude on a recent project. Mm-hmm. It was a 7-unit deal I got under contract 2 weeks ago. I had the private inspector go out first because that's just the way the timing had worked out.
Okay.
Based on GC availability. Paid them $1,200, later figured out. Plus, it was also all fully occupied.
Okay.
It was a little bit different because I knew that the time frame that I had to get through the due diligence, I needed to understand first what were the things from the inspector, because I was going to use that as leverage to get the price down. I knew it was overpriced anyway.
Right.
So I switched the order because of my strategy. It was occupied, so I know it's habitable, so it's not as extreme for the contractor to get in there immediately because people are already living in there.
Yeah. Right.
The other piece was I knew I needed leverage to get the price down, so I needed to get my inspector in there. So I ended up paying, $1,200 for the inspection, ended up not doing the deal, not because they didn't come out on the price, but when I started to go through more of the due diligence and asking them for lease renewals and rent roll, right, which is a ledger of all the rents and have they been paid. Asked them for a T12, which is a income and expense sheet that they weren't able to produce. Now, oftentimes, people may not be astute.
That's what I was
clerically,
gonna say. Yeah,
right?
If they just not, maybe they just don't have the.
Maybe, but you ain't got rent roll or T12, and the leases that you got all were signed in the last 30 days.
Okay, yeah.
For me, you know what I'm saying?
They say that's a red flag.
That would be a red flag. So it's like you have to mitigate your risk. Okay. For me, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Okay.
Prayed about it. 2 days later, I get a 10-unit under contract.
Okay.
Those numbers are looking a lot more favorable. I met with the contractors over there yesterday to lean on them a little bit because I was in town anyway, so I was like, why not? And so I got to go back to the negotiating table on that. But the GC almost always goes out before the inspector. Okay. Or I have them walk the property the same day.
Okay.
If it's like a semi-tenanted situation, I would have the GC and the inspector go out in the same day to mitigate having to re-enter people units if it's people staying there. So say half the building vacant, half of it tenanted, I would have them both go the same day so we're not constantly disturbing that tenant having to come in and do 2 different inspections. So
you have the GC and the inspector prior to you even making an offer for the property?
Oh no, I make the offer first.
So you'll make the offer first?
Yeah.
Is your contract accepted at this time, or are you?
Oh yeah, I only send people out to look at stuff that's under contract.
Okay.
Because fundamentally, you wear people out if you have them going to look at a bunch of stuff you're not buying or don't even have the potential to buy.
Okay.
So I try not to waste people's time. And for my new investors, don't do that. Like, don't burn people out having them look at projects that you don't even have under contract, because y'all hypothetically talking about a good deal which if it is a good deal, somebody like me or Ash gonna come buy it before you get a chance to put an offer in, right? So it's important to only have your resources go out to properties that you have control over so that y'all really have a viable opportunity to purchase it.
That's good.